In January, Ryerson University announced that it no longer recognizes the Ryerson Students' Union, and so it terminated its 34-year-long operating agreement with that student body. It's just the latest in a string of difficulties involving student unions in the province. Joining us now for a wider look at what's happening in the nation's capital, we welcome Sam Schroeder. He is a Student and Advocacy Commissioner of the University of Ottawa Students' Union. And here in our studio, Jen McMillan, Vice Provost of Students at Ryerson University, Kayla Weiler, National Executive Representative for the Canadian Federation of Students, Ontario, Jonathan Bradley, Ryerson journalism student and contributor to the Post Millennial, and Emma Sandry, Ryerson journalism student and news editor at the campus newspaper, The Eye-Opener. And it's great to have everybody here in our studio for this discussion. Sam, good to meet you in the nation's capital. Emma, I want to start with you because your newspaper, The Eye-Opener, boy, you really busted this thing open, didn't you?
Yes.
This was a big story for you guys. You uncovered some kind of fiscal malfeasance at the Students' Union. And for those who sort of are not up on all of the particulars of the story, remind us, fill us in. What happened?
Sure. So before I became a news editor at The Eye-Opener, I was working on a separate story about the RSU, which is our Students' Union. And I got a tip that we should be looking into the fact that the executives had credit cards and they weren't really supposed to have credit cards. So we kept on that story. We reported that they had credit cards and they weren't supposed to have them. And then we were able to get a source to provide us with pictures of those statements.
You want to tell us who your source was?
I can.
Okay.
But those statements showed some purchases that maybe we wouldn't expect students' unions to be, spending their money on. So,
for example?
The LCBO, there was a shisha bar on there, Airbnbs, those kinds of things. So something that is kind of outside of the realm of most student unions, I would say. And I guess kind of fast forward, the RSU is now no longer recognized by Ryerson University as the governing student body or the student union. So I guess that kind of is what starts us off.
Right. Now, in terms of the expenditures on those credit cards, how much money are we talking?
So at the time, it was estimated to be about $250,000. I think the confirmed number now is $260,000.
So this isn't going to buy a pack of gum and putting it on your credit card. This was a lot.
Yeah, so that was the overall spending, and then the spending that the union decided they couldn't guarantee was legitimate was $99,000. Yeah.
Okay, so let's now take the story over to the administration of the university. You learned about this information, and what did Ryerson decide to do?
So yeah, we learned about it from student media and the information that the Eye-Opener was able to uncover, and so we met with the student union, both the executive and the board of directors at that time in January. Myself and the president of the university.
Mohammed Lashmi was in on the conversation as well.
He was, yeah.
Okay.
He was
what did you
very
guys
concerned.
say to them?
We said we have concerns. These are highly unusual and concerning allegations that have been brought to light, and they agreed. And so we had a conversation with the RSU about steps that we thought could restore confidence, that could ensure that we are working together in order to ensure that students' money was appropriately accounted for. And so we agreed to ensure that we requested that the RSU conduct a forensic audit. They agreed, and subsequently passed motions at their board to do so. We requested they share that audit report with the university, and that we enter into a negotiation to open up what was a very dated agreement from 1986 that would focus on issues of accountability, financial transparency, good governance, those types of things.
But Jen, at the moment, the relationship between the university and its student union, kaput?
So the university in January of this year came to the very difficult decision to terminate our agreement with the RSU after spending a full year trying to get to the place that we had agreed to, where we would do those three things that I mentioned. They would conduct a forensic audit, we would hear about those results, and that we would negotiate a new agreement.
And how much consultation with students was done before that decision was made?
So we spent the entire year talking with the RSU, that's who our agreement was with, and attempting to come to an agreement to ensure that we could be accountable jointly for the student money that we were collecting.
What was their defense of the more than $250,000 that appears to have been unusually spent?
Well, I would say the individuals we were dealing with weren't trying to defend it. They acknowledged and recognized that there had been individuals in the RSU that had behaved inappropriately, and they had initially indicated they were interested in getting to the bottom of that as well.
Now they're suing you, right?
They are.
And what's the status of that lawsuit?
So the papers have been filed. There are some that are public with the court. We will file a statement of defense. We weren't surprised by that action, and so we remain confident in the decision that we've made in the best interest of students. We've heard from many students about their concerns about this, and so we will file our statement of defense.
Now, Jonathan, you've been writing about this story as well, right?
Yes, I have been.
Okay, tell us whether you think the university's response to this situation, namely to cut ties with the student union, whether you think that is a reasonable response for the university to have done.
I think it's an absolutely reasonable response. The Ryerson Students' Union for the past few years has been through multiple scandals. I think that the RSU should basically burn down and we should rebuild something from the ashes because the current model is not working and it's not representing students and it's unrealistic to keep it the way it is.
We should say we invited someone from the student union to appear on the program and they declined the invitation, which is their right to do so, but that's why they're not represented here. That's pretty provocative what you just said. You ought to burn it down and have something emerge from the ashes. What are you trying to say?
We need a new student union. We need a new model. The current model's not working. There's a whole bunch of problems with it. And because of that, it's unproductive. We have to start fresh because if we start fresh, we'll be able to have a new start and hopefully something better will happen.
Okay. Sam, let me get you into the conversation here in the nation's capital. You have a bit of a similar story to tell. Tell us what went on at the University of Ottawa.
Yeah, it was a very similar story in the end. So kind of like Jonathan was talking about there, there were years of scandal leading up to it, and then it all kind of culminated with allegations of embezzlement of upwards of $20,000, so not quite the same amount as RSU, but somewhere in the whereabouts. And that led to a loss of student trust. There were protests. The university in the end decided they were also going to end the agreement with the student union. From there, they entered an interim agreement to get it through the rest of the year. But they decided to have a referendum after students requested one, notably the Board of Governors, student representatives, and the student senators. In that referendum, 75% of students voted for a new student union, so the University of Ottawa Students' Union, as opposed to the Student Federation of the University of Ottawa. And then, as of May 1st, we started the process of building up a new union.
So where are things at today?
We're getting there. Most of the services are up and running again. We've got most of our staff hired. There's a couple of tangible things that you'd hope would have been done by now, like getting all of our telephones up and running. But we're getting there, and hopefully by the end of this year it'll pretty much all be there. And then September 2020, we're hoping to reopen the student businesses.
This is going to sound like one of those old fogey questions, Sam, but hang in there with me. Back in my day, I'm not sure any of us would have been smart enough to figure out how to embezzle a student union if we had that kind of authority. So can you give us some sense about how this kind of thing happens?
Yeah, so my understanding of how it went about was there was a club created, and that club was providing some services, and in the forensic audit they couldn't prove or disprove that those services were in fact provided. And then that club, which had a credit card who with the name on it of the president of the SFUO, had spent money on, I think they spent $950 on sunglasses, they'd spent $500 on a haircut. So again, very, very similar to RSU in that sense.
Any criminal charges being brought to bear here?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Do you think there should be?
I'll leave that up to people who have more knowledge of the criminal system than me.
This guy's going into politics someday. That was a great answer. Okay, Kayla, I want to bring you into the conversation now because you're here representing students from across the province of Ontario, not just at these institutions. Based on your knowledge of how things work, do student unions across Ontario actually have procedures in place, financial oversight, that kind of thing, to make sure this kind of mismanagement and or worse doesn't happen?
Yes, students' unions historically across the province have established bylaws and policies through democratic procedures such as their annual general members meeting, finance committees of their board of directors, but also having the outline of procedures of oversight internally in the students' union about how finances are managed and who manages the finances, but also who oversees the overall procedures. And the really important and interesting thing about students' unions is that these procedures have been voted upon by students who are members of their students' unions, because it is a vested interest of students who are members of a students' union to have that say in how money is being used, but also set up the procedures of oversight so that financial mismanagement isn't something that happens. But if it does, they have procedures already outlined that work. It's not necessarily, so they have the structures already in place.
Well, you say
you
say the structure's in place, but clearly something here went askew. What do you think went wrong here?
I think it's what has happened is that people weren't following the procedures that were outlined in the bylaws and policies, and we are unanimous, or we are independent, democratic student organizations, and we govern ourselves internally. And if those procedures are followed, we're able to figure out and remedy these situations. And these things do take time. They take time so that we make sure that we have fully went through the procedures so that nothing is missed. So it takes time to remedy these things.
Jonathan, what do you think stories like this, when people read about them in the paper, do to the level of trust that should exist within the student body, between the administration and the students, in the broader community? What's your view on that?
I think that what happens when we do this is it makes students feel that the student union is pointless. It makes them become apathetic. For example, last year's RSU election, the 2019 RSU election, the Ryerson reported that it had the lowest voter turnout in 5 years. The University of Toronto Students' Union, their 2019 election had a voter turnout among students of 4.2%, which is low. So it makes students not want to trust their students' union. It makes them think that their students' union doesn't have their back, and it makes them think that it's pointless. Student unions do offer some good services, but right now the current model is not working.
Emma, what do you think this does to the level of trust students have either for each other or for the university or whatever?
Well, I definitely think that after what happened, students definitely they didn't feel that they could trust the RSU. There was a lot of distrust there. I think even just reading comments on our own articles, on the Eye Openers articles, students were expressing their outrage for everything that had happened. But I also think that despite what happened, the RSU still provides a lot of really great services, and they do a lot of really great things for students. So like they have a food bank, which, of course, Ryerson doesn't run, but the RSU does. They have equity service centers for students who are marginalized on campus. So those are things that the RSU does, and I don't think that it's something that you can come back from in a year. They have to keep trying to build that trust from students.
In which case, was it a mistake for the university to sever ties with the student union?
That's a tough question.
That's what we do here, Emma. We ask the tough questions.
I mean, obviously, I think that there are real concerns about their financial management skills, but I don't think that it's necessarily fair to punish a whole union based on what I would consider a few bad apples. People are trying their best, and I think that you're not necessarily going to see that progress in a year.
Jen, that takes me to you to ask the question whether or not you think the university overreacted to, as Emma puts it, a few bad apples.
Well, I would say I agree strongly with the notion of strong, independent student government. That's ultimately, that matters to us. It's a value for us, and it's something that we want to work with. It's something that I personally have worked with my entire career. So that is ultimately what we are striving for, is a strong, independent, well-run student government that is accountable to its members and that works in partnership with the university. And so that structure can provide tremendously important services to students, and that's what we're after.
But I got to ask you whether you feel the university overreacted in doing what it did.
The university spent over a year engaging with 2 different executive teams from the RSU, making very reasonable and accommodating requests in an effort to renegotiate a circumstance where we could respond to students' concerns. We ended up in recent months with several impeachments, several resignations.
So Trump's not the only one. Other impeachments have been happening as well.
Yeah,
and
the university became aware of allegations of investigations through the Ministry of Labor into unhealthy work environments, and ultimately a petition with over 1,000 signatures on it that Ryerson community members had indicated that they were asking the university to act in terms of removing the president, and we quite clearly said that's not our role, as both Kayla and Emma have outlined. We don't want that role, but we do want students to have a voice in this, to have a choice to say what kind of student government it is that they want. If that includes the current RSU, then students will decide that.
Can you imagine, or I guess I should ask it this way, what kinds of things will have to take place before the university is prepared to reconsider reestablishing ties with the student union?
Yeah, they're very simple. We've talked very clearly and transparently. We've made a commitment to sharing this information with our community. We've communicated with students repeatedly over the last couple of weeks. We're talking about things like basic financial accountability and good accounting principles, principles of good governance, HR practices, and communication. Those are the kinds of things that we want to have in place, and we are prepared and excited to work with a student government who will deliver on that.
And Emma, just sort of finish the story for us there, if you would. The money that these guys spent without any oversight and seemingly on personal things that had nothing to do with the student union business, is that money gone? I mean, are they being asked to pay it back, or what's the story there?
Yes. So the RSU was supposed to conduct a forensic audit, but they said due to costs and time constraint, they were only able to get the firm PricewaterhouseCoopers to do a financial review. But they have filed a report with the Toronto Police. So there is a potential that something can come out of it. They said that they are still looking into potential avenues as to recoup that money. So they haven't given up that possibility yet. And now, of course, the police are involved.
And do we have any sense about whether charges are going to emerge from this?
Not yet.
Not
no.
yet. Stay tuned, I guess is the right word.
Stay tuned.
Okay. Sam, let me get you back in here. You know, you've heard the story from Ryerson. You know your own personal experience involved at the University of Ottawa. What do you think Ryerson can learn from the experience that you guys experienced in the nation's capital?
Yeah, I mean, if it's anything similar to what happened at the University of Ottawa, it's very clear that there are structural issues with some student unions. As was mentioned by, I think it was Emma, student unions do all kinds of great things, whether it be, you know, those equity services, whether it be a peer help center, whether it be, you know, a food bank, foot patrol for the walk home program. But every once in a while, student unions run into structural issues and students lose faith in those institutions. And so the onus in some ways is on the university to make sure that, you know, the students' will is heard on that front. In the case of the University of Ottawa, that referendum very clearly showed that. Students had lost faith in the General Assembly. Students had lost faith in elections. So the only way to move forward with student trust for true student representation was through changing up the student union.
Do you have any advice for the students at Ryerson University as to what maybe their next move ought to be?
Yeah, think about it carefully, because the transition isn't as easy as it's oftentimes made out to be. But if there are serious structural issues with the RSU, then it may be worth it. So you just need to consider it based on those two things, and it's going to be a trade-off.
Kayla, we have an expression in journalism: 1, 2, trend. Okay, we've got two examples here, and you know, people watching this might reasonably suspect, well, if it's happening at a couple of places, we can imagine it's probably happening elsewhere as well. Do you have any sense about how widespread this is?
I wouldn't say that it is a trend, and in the fact that each situation is very nuanced. There's different students at different campuses. They have different needs and different realities of being a student at different universities and colleges. So I don't see that it is a trend, and it's actually, you know, again, it's like student unions change throughout the years. Historically, we've seen that students unions in this province and in this country have internally changed their structures and their procedures and put in better financial policies in place, and that's done internally. It does not necessarily, you don't have to, you know, remove the students union and start all over again to make these changes.
Okay, but I'm wondering whether, given the experience that these two university student unions have gone through, does your federation feel any obligation to sort of fan out across the province and say, look, people, we can't have another one of these. Mind your P's and Q's.
So like part of the role of the Federation is to assist students' unions in talking about how to improve the bylaws and policies, financial procedures that work. And we have a variety of different structures that we've seen play out at different students' unions that we can assist to students in having those conversations. And I think these conversations are very vital and important because students' unions fill a void on their campus. There's nothing more unique than a students' union that is run by students for students, and it's a unique situation of democracy for students to practice that direct democracy. And part of the role of the Federation is to make those connections and make those networks so that students can have those conversations about what works here, but what could also I bring back to my own campus to make that like the students' union stronger and better for future years.
Gotcha. Okay, this is not the only controversy that the post-secondary sector has been dealing with as it relates to students and governance and that kind of thing. And I want to take us back a little over a year and a half ago when one of the first things that the new Doug Ford progressive conservative government did was essentially introduce something called the Student Choice Initiative. And Emma, I'm going to rely on you here to sort of remind our viewers what that was all about.
Sure. So it was basically a policy directive that came top down, which stated that previously mandatory parts of students' tuition were now not mandatory. Students could opt out of them if they chose to do so. So things that were mandatory included like athletics, campus safety initiatives, things like that. And things that were not mandatory were students' unions, student presses, student course unions, groups, that kind of things. Students didn't have to pay for them. So of course, that also came with a whole host of cuts to OSAP. And so when people at the CFS went to the Ontario government and asked for that policy directive to be repealed, to be struck down, which did happen. One of the things that they discussed in court was that, this initiative, which is supposed to be saving students money, came with all of this stuff, these OSAP cuts, which inherently are costing students so much more money. And of course, at the same time, defunding student press and student unions, which provide a vital service for campuses.
Jonathan, I'll get you to pick up the story in as much as, this was portrayed by the provincial government as, we want to give students the right not to have to spend money on things they don't want to spend it on. What's your view of that approach?
I think that the Student Choice Initiative, for the most part, was a good thing. You should be able to opt out of certain things like the CFS, because they don't represent
Canadian Federation of Students.
They don't represent my views. They don't represent students I've spoken with. I believe that you should be able to opt out of the RSU as well, because if you don't like the agenda of the current student union, then you should be able to opt out of it. However, there are things that should be mandatory. I believe that campus press should be mandatory because they're the watchdogs on campus. They provide people with accountability. So should walk-safe programs and anything involving campus safety and health. That should be mandatory. But for the most part, it's a pretty good policy.
What about the argument that people watching this, they may not all love Doug Ford's government, but you still got to pay your taxes. You don't get to not pay taxes just because you disagree with some of the policy pronouncements from the government. Isn't that the same thing here?
That's a little different because government we're all mandated under. We all live in Ontario, therefore we all have to pay taxes. Whereas with the student union, it's kind of like, if I don't like that, then maybe I don't want to have this representative. Maybe I don't agree with the agenda. It's kind of a different thing because it's not really an official government, it's just a student government.
Well, I bet students think it's pretty official, or some of them do anyway. Anyway, let me go on to Sam. That was a little aside. Sam, given this student, Student Choice Initiative, what kind of challenges or problems did that pose for you when students were no longer obligated to pay for some of the things that they had to in the past?
Yeah. Well, the first problem was budgeting, because we have to present our budget before we knew what the opt-out rate was going to be. So when it comes to budgeting for the different services that we wanted to open, it was very, very difficult to do that. It also meant inevitably a reduction in services, a reduction in the amount of staff that we could bring on, which means that some of the services that student unions provide, which are very important to students and very important to all students, couldn't be funded as well as it would have been otherwise. So it leads to all kinds of issues in that sense. I think there are other ways that we can go about it. And tying back into the last conversation we had about RSU, I mean, it was a student paper who uncovered that. It was a student paper at our university who uncovered it, La Hatonde. So to not properly fund student papers is inevitably going to lead to, worse ethics at the student union level, less accountability.
Emma, let me figure out from you, what is the status now about whether or not students who go to Ryerson are obliged through their fees to support the eye-opener?
So I believe Ryerson took down their opt-out portal, so students can no longer opt out, and they have started collecting fees once more. Students are now obligated to pay for the eye-opener, whether they like it or not.
Is that a good thing?
I think it is. Perhaps they don't think it is. I don't want to ever say, people come from different situations, and sometimes $5 means the difference between making rent or not. But there are also a whole host of students who are saying, well, it's a good thing that I get to opt out of paying for the eye-opener because, they're a left-wing campus newspaper and their reporting is inherently biased and we don't like them.
Actually, I think the Premier said more than that. He said the student funds end up going to a bunch of crazy Marxist nonsense.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys are?
Maybe. Maybe that's the perception. I don't think we are. I think we're pretty balanced in our reporting, but of course there are always people who are going to disagree with how we report.
Sure, that's the way it works. Jen, what's the university's position on whether or not this student choice initiative is a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, our approach to the Student Choice Initiative is similar to what it is on all of these types of aspects. We partnered with our student groups and those who receive fees and talked about what was the requirement of the directive and how could we move forward to preserve as much student life on campus as possible. We recognize the value of the services that are provided, and so we engaged in deep conversations with the Eye Opener, with the radio station, with the RSU about what we could do within the confines of the expectations on us of that directive. So we
But did you oppose the policy?
Compliant. It's not really the university's place to say whether we oppose or support. There was a directive that came with very clear consequences, and so we feel like we struck a really strong balance of preserving as much, including some components of campus media that remained mandatory. And then once the directive was struck down, we did remove the option for students to opt out of fees and continue to collect them as mandatory.
You could infer from that you were opposed to the idea of letting this escape.
Could you?
I think you could.
I think we believe in the value of services that are provided by students. I think we've also demonstrated quite strongly that we don't believe that should be unchecked, that there has to be accountability for that.
Sure. Okay, I understand the tightrope that the university has to walk on this, but the Federation of Students felt no similar tightrope. What did you do about it?
No, so we filed a legal challenge against the Student Choice Initiative. So it was the Canadian Federation of Students with the York Federation of Students, under the fact that the Student Choice Initiative was a direct attack on the democracy of students' unions. Students have established students' unions and different student organizations through democratic referendum on their campuses. And if there are to be changes to those funds, it's through referendum that those decisions are made. So we took the government to court on the fact that this it infringes on the autonomy of the students' unions and the administration's agreements with their memorandums of understanding, but also the Student Choice Initiative was put forward in bad faith. If the government truly wanted to save students money, they wouldn't have cut $670 million to OSAP, and they would have made a larger reduction in tuition fees with more public funding to education. So we took it to the court and we won. It was a unanimous decision
won the
of
first
the
round.
divisional court.
You won the first round. Government's appealing, right?
So the government has requested for an appeal, and so in this moment we're somewhat in limbo about what is going to happen next. But the important thing is that the Student Choice Initiative has been deemed unlawful, and that in the end we might see that the appeal is how it goes through. But at the current moment, the Student Choice Initiative has been deemed unlawful, and administrations to respect that legal decision and continue to collect student referendum fees.
What is the principle that you are standing on here?
It's the principles of students' unions is that it's students that make these decisions.
Not the government.
It's not the government nor the minister who can have a say on how budgets how fees are being collected, but how budgets are being decided. It's the members of the students' union who make those decisions.
Sam, who's in the right on this one?
You know what? I agree with Kayla on this one. Students decided that they wanted to pay these fees, and they've continued to do so. Even under the Student Choice Initiative, we had 80% of students continue to pay the fees that we levied. When we had to have a referendum to have our fees approved in April, 80% of students approved of these fees all over again, right? So students agree with having these services on campus. Students want these services on campus. And I think that students ought to be able to have those services and ought to be able to have them fully funded.
Jonathan, you're a proud conservative.
You could say that.
I think I just did. What do you think of the Premier's position, which is that some of these student fees, in his view, go to sustaining organizations that, as he described it, push out a bunch of crazy Marxist nonsense?
I'd say that's absolutely true. There are student unions on campus. I know at Ryerson we have a socialist Marxist kind of group. You could say that's crazy Marxist nonsense. You could also say that the CFS engages in some left-wing campaigns that don't represent all students. I feel that student unions and the CFS should be apolitical. We should be advocating for what students want, so things that will make all students feel better, such as more mental health resources and increasing study spaces. We shouldn't be taking positions on foreign policy and economic policy and other policies.
What about it, Kayla? Does the Federation of Students get a little bit too far out over its skis from time to time?
I would not, no. I would say what it is that we take the direction from the membership. Member locals take the political direction from their membership as well. It is like through policies and motions that are put forward at our general meetings that we have taken stances on these things. And I'd say that students' lives are political. The fact that Ontario students pay the highest tuition in the country, yet have the lowest per student funding, the largest class sizes, and the lowest faculty to student ratio, is that our lives are political. And this money that is put forward towards the Federation as well as the students' unions helps provide those mental health services. It's the member locals of the Federation that have and students' unions across the province that have pushed for legislation for sexual violence policies on our campuses that are student-centered and survivor-centered. It's also the fact that students' unions have fought for fall reading weeks, which benefits everyone. Everybody benefits from the advocacy work of a students' union.
You want a fall reading week as well? Hang on a sec.
If you've stepped on the campus, you benefit from the academic advocacy. Who represents you during academic appeals? It's the students' union representatives.
Okay, back up a bit here. You want a fall reading week as well?
I actually came from a campus where there was no fall reading week, and it was a dramatic effect on students' mental health. And these are the things that students have been able to push for.
Okay, I shouldn't be flippant about this. You're right. But so what's the issue about why students need a fall reading week? Just, I guess, for people who don't know, there's a reading week in when? February?
In the February winter semester.
Yeah, you get a week off to just sort of recharge batteries or do whatever you got to do. Why do you need one in the fall?
So some of the reasons why people will push for fall reading weeks is the fact that that Thanksgiving long weekend is just a short little break in the middle of the fall semester where students are back at school after a long summer of working several jobs to be able to save up money to pay for their semester. And just even my own experience with mental health on campus is that we received one day after the Thanksgiving long weekend, and it was so stressful in the fact that I lived more than 2 hours away from the University of Guelph, and I wanted to go home to see my parents. And so that weekend is a whirlwind. It's a very busy weekend, and having a fall reading week does alleviate some of the pressures. But I will say that a fall reading week is not the only solution to the mental health crisis on our campus.
No, fair enough. And I should get Ryerson's position on this. Do they have a fall reading week,
Yes.
Ryerson?
Yeah.
You do have it, eh? Really? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, you're not going to like this, but what the heck, let me do it anyway. Doug Ford's crazy Marxist nonsense comment. Do you think the university and student fees spend too much time supporting some organizations that would fall under that category?
I think anytime you try to categorize an entire diverse group of organizations with one statement is not accurate. It can't be accurate. And I think that we've heard compelling statements and arguments about lots of positive, meaningful work that happens through these organizations on campus. They contribute to student life, they contribute to the campus experience, and that matters.
Okay. You have a fall reading week?
Yes, we do.
You do,
Go
eh?
to Ryerson.
And is it useful?
It is useful, but what I'm concerned about with these student unions as well is that when they don't really, trying to figure out how I'm going to phrase this, they don't stand up for free speech. And what I mean by that is they're anti-free speech, they're not open to inquiry. University is where you learn how to think, not what to think. And these student unions and the CFS, they don't seem to be supportive of free speech. When the whole Lindsay Shepherd affair was going on, I didn't see any comment from student unions across the country or from the CFS. When Doug Ford announced his free speech on university campuses policy, the CFS came out against it. I don't know why that is. Free speech is important. It's a fundamental freedom in our society.
You know what, Jonathan?
And I'm troubled by it.
You have opened the door to a whole other show. We should get all of you back to have a show about that, because that's a terrific topic as well. We're plumb out of time. Thanks, everybody, for coming on to TVO tonight and helping us out with this. Sam Schroeder in the nation's capital, Jen McMillan from Ryerson, Kayla Weiler from the Canadian Federation of Students, Ontario, Jonathan Bradley, the post-millennial, Emma Sandry, the eye-opener. Great to have you all on TVO tonight. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.